One of our favorites on the virtual edition of Stories and More is Betty Ann Polaha. She is an artist in residence for the Ballad Hospital System, and we look forward to her story this evening. Welcome to the stage, Betty Ann Polaha.
One thing that every married couple learns, and that is that husbands and wives, well, there's just some things that they need to do separately. And I learned this lesson the hard way. You see, Joe and I met the summer before our senior year in high school, and it was love at first sight. And then when it came time to go to college, we chose separate schools, but they were only an hour and a half apart. So I can tell you that almost every weekend for the 4 years that I was in school, Joe drove to my school, picked me up, and took us both back to our hometown. Why? Because we were in love. And we had been separated for 4 whole days. And you know, in the late 60s, there wasn't any of this silly hanky-panky stuff where men and women were allowed to be in the same dorm room. Oh, no. My school was co-ed, but a guy couldn't get past the lobby where he could page you. And Joe's school, well, it was all male. And the one time that I tried to go down and see him, well, I had to throw pebbles at his window to let him know I was outside. That's how bad it was. So, of course, we went home because at home we could see each other Friday, and most of Saturday, and Sunday on the ride back. There was free food and laundry service. We did that for 4 years. And during that time, we only saw our college friends mostly during the week or on the big weekends like homecoming or the concert or something like that. Well, you can imagine after all those years of being kept apart, we couldn't wait to get married. So we were getting married August 19th after I graduated. And that summer, well, I was so busy with wedding stuff, fittings and invitations and food and flowers and seating arrangements and gifts, that I didn't notice that Joe was spending time with a buddy from college. His name was Dick. And Dick and Joe, they shared an interest in sports cars. Dick had an MGB and belonged to the Sports Car Club of America. Dick appreciated Joe being his one plus, his sidekick, to go to races that were nearby or far away. And Joe actually went overnight with Dick, and I didn't even notice. Well, the wedding went off as planned. It was wonderful. And I remember walking down the aisle feeling triumphant because now nobody was going to keep us apart. No silly school rules and no parents checking what time I came in and what condition I was in, and no more making out in a cramped car. We had our own apartment in a new city where I had a teaching job. We were going to be together forever. We had a honeymoon, and not 2 weeks after that, Dick calls and asks Joe to go to a race in Bridgehampton, New York. We were living in Philadelphia at the time. This would require a 2-night stay in a motel, plus food and helping with the gas and other expenses. And Joe said he wanted to go. We were only married for 3 weeks. I said, you want to be away for a whole weekend? You're going to leave me here in a strange town where I don't really know anybody? And you're going to spend money on 2 nights in a motel? Well, Joe got the message and he went back to Dick with my response. Well, Dick wasn't going to give up that easy. Dick came up with a plan. He said, it's simple. We'll bring Betty Ann along. I know a girl that I can invite to keep her company. And this girl, Well, her father is a Boy Scout leader, and he can give us all the camping equipment we need, so you won't be spending a whole lot of money. Well, when Joe came back to me with the plan, I liked it. We were going to be a married couple going out with another couple, and we were going to have an adventure. We were going to go camping, which we had never done before. And I was going to see an exciting race. And oh, wow. So Joe picked me up right from school on that Friday afternoon. I had already packed my suitcase, and we went to Dick's. And Dick's got his father's old station wagon. And oh, I met Margaret. I forgot to say that. Well, she was okay. And we threw our suitcases in the car, and then we threw all the camping equipment out. We didn't even know what half of it was. And off we went to Bridgehampton, New York. When we got to the campground, oh, wait a minute. I don't want to give you a false picture here. We got to the ground that we camped on, but in no way did it look like a campground. You know, there were no signs, there were no fire pits or tables, or there was nothing. It was flat ground with vegetation and a road that went around it with gravel, just a few trees on the edge. And being novices, we didn't even take account to where the restrooms were. We were one of the first people there, so we picked a spot over by the trees. The first order of business was putting up the tent. Well, let me just say that this tent was made out of a brown canvas, heavy brown canvas. It had wooden poles and ropes and stakes and no snaps or zippers or any of that stuff. It was a big effort putting that up. I mean, it was almost like a circus tent. I think it slept 8. It kind of looked like it belonged in a World War II movie. I mean, maybe that's where the Boy Scouts got it. I don't know, but it was big enough to sleep 8. And then Dick said, we have to put up the second tent. What for? This is big enough for all of us. And then they told me the caveat on this whole deal. Margaret's father, the Boy Scout leader, wanted the boys, men, to be good Boy Scouts. And he said that in order to get the equipment, the girls had to sleep in one tent and the boys had to sleep in another. What? I thought it was done with all these separation rules between, oh, this is not. Well, what could I say? The boys started to put up their tent, and their tent was a pup tent. And I'm here to tell you that that night, Dick got to sleep as close to Joe as I wanted to. And I'm sure Joe's feet hung out the other end because it wasn't even 6 feet long. Well, I think we had hot dogs, and then later on we turned in for the evening. And that's when they started to come. Attila the Hun and the barbarians, all the men who had left their wives and girlfriends behind, were out for their weekend. I guess they got there late because they had to go to work or something or came farther. There was tents here and there and everywhere. They were putting them up, no rhyme or reason, but right next to us. And apparently these guys weren't any better at putting up tents than we were, because putting up their tents required a lot of cursing and foul language. And I shivered inside my tent. Well, they finally got their tents up, and then Act 2 started, the serious part, the drinking. All the men hovered around their fires and started teasing one another and bullying each other. And pretty soon fights broke out, and there was music. And it was like, I don't know. I thought, I'm so glad nobody knows that there's 2 women sleeping inside this tent. But then Margaret said, I have to go to the bathroom. I said, oh, please, Margaret, we can't go out there. She said, but I really have to go. So, okay, first we take this flashlight, and the 2 of us start to take the path to the bathroom. But the flashlight, well, it wasn't a good idea because it caused Attila the Hun to notice us, and we got these risque invitations, shall we say, and cat calls, and we quickly put out the flashlight and just snuck in between the cars. Oh, we made it back and forth, but I was never so scared in my life, and I didn't, I didn't want to wake up Joe and Dick because they were no match for the hordes that were out there. Well, the next morning, we got up, and Dick and Joe moved the station wagon to the fence where the racetrack is so that we could watch. And then they left us because Dick had pit passes for him and Joe. So Margaret and I sat in the car and we did what two women normally do. We talked. We told each other our lives stories, our first boyfriend, our first kiss, our first job, how we got along with our mother, our favorite teacher, our favorite store, all that stuff. I mean, we could have wrote books about each other after that day. There was nothing left to tell. That night, the boys took us out for dinner. I think they felt sorry for leaving us alone all day. But when we came out of the restaurant, it was raining, and seriously raining. There was nothing else to do but go back to the tent and get in it. And the rain got worse, and the wind blew, and limbs from the trees were falling down on the tent, and I was scared. It was loud, and thunder was crashing, and I do believe it was a hurricane. We heard noise outside, and I got up and looked out the flap, and well, Joe and Dick's tent had collapsed, and they were furiously trying to put it back together while they were getting soaked. And that's when I turned to Margaret and I said, Margaret, you know what you can do? You can put yourself in your sleeping bag and you can slip it all the way up and around your head and you can crawl in it. You can lock it if you want. But those men are coming in here and sleeping with us because I do not intend to be a widow when I've only been married for 3 weeks. Well, the boys came in and spent the night with us. In the morning, we were rudely awakened by someone in authority who told us that this ground that we were camping on was going to morph into ground that cars were going to park on. It was going to become a parking lot. We had to get up all our tents, all our things, and be out of there in like 45 minutes. It was freezing cold. It was still drizzling. I grabbed my jeans and put them on over top my pajamas. I put a sweatshirt on top of my pajamas, and I put on my trench coat because that was the only coat I had. That was the one I wore to school. It didn't have a hood. I found a scarf and I folded it into a triangle and I put it on my head like a babushka. I didn't care. I was cold. I was wet. Anyway, we threw everything into the station wagon, and once again, the boys parked the car up against the fence so that we could watch the race. There's Margaret and there's me, and we have nothing to say to each other. No, me who tells stories, couldn't think of a thing to say. I wished I had a book or a deck of cards or something like that, but I didn't. So anyway, what happened was the weather started to get better and it started to get warm in the car. So I took off my trench coat and I took off my sweatshirt and we decided we'd get out of the car, and lo and behold, it was clearing up all over the place. The sun was coming out. It was getting really, really warm, and it was 12 o'clock. And it was time for the people who were coming to see just the race. Now, I'm telling you that they were coming to be seen at the race, not just see the race, but to be seen at it. The road was right behind our station wagon, and one after another, Corvette, Triumph, MG, Porsche, all with the tops down. And the drivers, well, they were cool. They either had white shirts on with their collars turned up and sunglasses, or they had a polo shirt and driving gloves. And to complete the picture, beside them, they had beautiful girls. I'm telling you that I swear that I saw Sandra D in a halter dress, and I think it was Twiggy with her hair cut short and the big glasses. And Annette Funicello was there in cut off jeans. And even Nancy Sinatra was there in a miniskirt and boots. And me? Well, I looked like my grandmother. I looked like a refugee. I wanted to, well, I got right back in the car and just crept down below the seat so they wouldn't see me. And I was miserable. And so I learned a lesson. And behind me, you can see my husband's collection of car stuff. I stay away from it. That's his. Thank you.
Betty Ann, we're so fortunate to have you share your story with us tonight. Thank you.